Let's talk bottle stoppers. You need a blank piece of wood and a stopper. This one happens to be from Penn State Industries. It cost me somewhere in the neighborhood of $4 to $6. And of course, the more you buy, bigger discount you can get. You know, you buy 50 of them, you're going to get a better deal than if you buy one. I recently ordered some stoppers from Amazon Prime, and they came in a box of 10 of them, and I got them for $20. I thought that was a great deal, but you get what you pay for. They're a little bit cheaper quality. I can tell they're a little bit lighter weight. Some of the finish isn't quite as nice, but I did like that they come in a variety of different colors in the pack. Got them a copper finish, a gold finish, an antique finish, a black finish, and a chrome finish. These ones also happen to come with a little bit different size shank for your mounting of the blank on top. This one, gosh, I guess it's maybe about a 5/16, looks like. I haven't built one to put on top of this style yet. This one from Penn State, and I've ordered from other places, not just Penn State, but they typically come with a 3/8 inch national course and to put on your blank. The end that goes into the stopper itself, I think, is like an M8 by 125 thread. Okay. So you need a stopper of some kind. They even sell cork ones. I'll show you one of those later. You need a stopper and a piece of wood. Your blank's going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 1.5 inches, maybe 2 inches square by, I don't know, 2.5, maybe 3 inches. I couldn't imagine going much bigger and having it look proportionally correct. That'd be pretty good. I mean, you can use anything. I've made them out of long turning stock, which comes nice. It's already square, but it comes in random lengths. This is a piece of lignum vitae. If you've never used this stuff, man, this stuff is pretty. And it is really fun to turn. It creates a really, really nice smooth surface, and the smell of this stuff is fantastic. Tree of Life, I believe that translates to lignum vitae. It's kind of expensive. Here's a piece of burl. Australian brown Malay burl or something like that. I got this for a Christmas present. Haven't dived into this yet. This is a chunk of crushed mud. Crushed mud. I have no idea what that even is. Looks and feels kind of like a resin of some kind with some coloring added. Most of you have seen these from me before. I like gluing together different layers to get some different effects. Purple heart and zebra wood, a little thin layer of like a maple veneer in between. This one I actually turned round, then sanded 3 flat sides with my sander and put on a piece of purple heart, zebra, and Wengi wood. This is what it might look like before you turn it. You know, just get creative. Makes for some interesting features after it's turned. Okay, I've got a blank here. It's about 1.5 inches square. I use this center finder a lot. You're going to need to drill a hole in the end. If your blank that you're using isn't quite square, just do that on 4 corners. And that'll tell you if it's square. So you can see I made a double line. It's not quite square. So of course the middle is going to be the average. You know, you just got to be close. The closer you are, the larger you're going to get, more wood you're going to get out of your stopper, so to speak. I just use an awl, poke a little hole, and now I need to drill a hole there for this in the stopper. And what I use, I made this little mandrel myself. It's just a 3/8 inch bolt. I, of course, cut the head off so it'll fit in my Jacob style chuck. Tighten that up. And then after I drill the hole, we're gonna thread it out with just a tap. Okay, for drilling, I highly recommend you use a drill press. Due to the fact that you want the mandrel that you're going to put in this hole to be perpendicular to that surface. So when you put the stopper on, you get a good fit between the blank and the stopper. That's my whiny dog, by the way. So if you're going to drill into an irregular shape, say like a piece of firewood or a tree branch or something, get a flat surface, somehow figure out a way to get a nice perpendicular hole started into that blank. I've got this held with some hand screws. I'm using a letter size Q drill bit. You can use a 5/16 is what I think that calls for when you're doing metal, but for wood, this is just a slightly bigger than that, and it seems to be easier to cut the threads. And I'm going to go about an inch deep. All right, I've got a 3/8 inch just regular metal tap that I'm going to bore this out with. I've got a pencil mark on there to give me my depth I need to go in order to cut my threads. You don't want to over tighten your bottom of your tap out in the hole. That's a good way to ruin the threads. Now, even if you do, you can certainly just glue, maybe Gorilla Glue or even super glue or epoxy that into the hole if your hole runs a little bit big. Doesn't fit tight with the threads. I end up gluing them in the end anyway, just to make sure they don't come out, because after all, people are going to be possibly pulling on these. There we go. Yeah, that goes on there pretty easy. If you've got a soft piece of wood, and I've had these threads bust out on me before if the wood's really soft when you put them on the lathe, you put super glue in that hole, slosh it around, dump out the extra, let it dry, and then just re-tap it again. That gives you some good threads again to put it in there. And like I said, in the end you can just glue it in, but you've got to get it on your chuck somehow to hold pretty tight while you're turning the thing. Oh, and I have on my man-made one here, I've got just a regular size washer that comes with it, and I've been using this for a while, so it's likely a little bit smaller. These things start out about 7/8 of an inch around, and that works nice because that washer size matches the diameter of most of these bottle stoppers. These Penn State ones notice a little bit bigger in diameter than the cheapo ones from China. Okay, we'll put that on here, and then we'll chuck it into the lathe, and we'll be ready to turn it around. Okay, off camera, I put my block on my chuck, and as I turned it, I noticed that it's not real square. I did not drill square. I think the reason is, number one, the end of my block that I picked up, I assumed was square, was not. So when it sat on the table, it was slanted. That was reason number one. Reason number two, probably never happens to you either. I raised and lowered my drill press table. And if I don't lock my drill press table, it actually maybe changes, I don't know, maybe a degree and a half even. It's just a cheapo Harbor Freight drill press. So when the table's not locked, it's actually at a slightly different angle. So anyway, I took it off and changed the angle a little bit just so I get a better, flatter seating of the washer with the end of the board. Any of this other unevenness or wobble that I've got is, of course, going to be erased once I start turning. The shape I'm going for on this one is going to be similar to this one I have here. I'm not going to take the time to dial in my diameters or anything. I'm just going to kind of go for it with my gouges. I am not using the support of the tail of the lathe. You can, and I've done that before. With something this short, I really don't think it's necessary. If you're turning something longer, you'd want to support it with your tailstock. I'm going to use, for roughing it out, I've got like a 1-inch spindle gouge here. Here we go. I want to speed that up. This is a Shopsmith, one of those multi-purpose 5-in-1 tools. I use mine designated as a lathe pretty much 100% of the time. It's getting to be about 100 years old, I'm thinking. I'm guessing maybe 30s, 40s it was made. Pretty close to round. I'm just going to move my tool rest closer. I don't know if you can see my wrench in the video or not, but I've got this tool rest. I've got to use 2 wrenches to tighten up my tool rest. Okay, so that pretty much establishes my fattest diameter here. And I'm just going to kind of taper it back on this side and then round it over on this side, kind of point it at first. And then we'll do some more shaping. Let's see, this I think is about a 1/2 inch, maybe 5/8 inch spindle gouge, maybe a kind of a fingernail grind. I try to start with it flat, and as I go this way, I roll. It creates more of a shearing cut. You're kind of starting with more of a scrape, but as you roll, it becomes more of a shearing cut. And that washer I have there, remember, is pretty much the diameter of the top of the stopper. Now, it's not critical that you make your blank the same size where it transitions, but it looks good when you do. Trying to get rid of some of this bolt. kind of stop and get a bearing of where I'm going. Okay, my overall length is about there. The parting tool, faster way to just cut off my waste. I've got like a 3/8 inch spindle gouge. Maybe that's a bowl gouge. Again, not critical, it's the same. Looks like this is quite a bit longer. Actually, I like the looks of that probably a little bit better. Just looks a little different. Okay, I've got kind of an inward curve here I didn't do anything about. Let's add that in a little bit. This, by the way, I believe is mahogany. Anyway, similar yet different. Probably going to 2 different people. Doesn't really matter if it's a match set, so there you go. Got most of my rough areas fairly smooth, maybe just a little bit of light sanding. Remove the tool rest when you're sanding. Gonna slow the speed down a little bit. I've only got 3 speeds on this old beast. I couldn't even tell you what they are. I guess fast, medium, and slow. For sanding purposes, I really have fallen in love with these things, these sanding packs where you get different grits. The grits underneath here, I got 150, 240, 320, 400, and 600. So I'm going to start with 150. I just like ripping off a small part. I used to save these. You never know what they are after you save them though, because it doesn't have the number on the back. For a long time I'd take my Sharpie and I'd write 150 on the back, but I'd lose the thing. I mean, if you're being really frugal, yeah, I could use this again, but nowadays I just throw them away. Maybe just a word on design and proportions. If you look at the overall length of this, this major ball element is probably makes up about 2/3 of its length. And I've always kind of been told, if you think about and break up your turning into thirds, it just gives it some proportion that people find pleasing. Just trying to get rid of any tool marks. Might be a little ring right here. Check that. We'll get a piece out of 240 grit. Sanding, yeah. Most fun thing to watch, right? Good news is these are small and it doesn't take very long. Some of these tight to find areas, I like to use the edge, or sometimes you can fold your paper over if it's easier. Fold it over and use the corner. It's always nice when you can get these nice sharp corners on your transition points. Enough of that. This is 320. Looking nice and smooth. I'll go one step further. You could end there. I mean, gosh, it's pretty darn smooth. You're gonna put some finish on it. You probably aren't gonna notice the difference, but if you look for swirl marks, you know, rings where if it's left many rings, you wanna get rid of those. So we got 400 here. I like using a little bit of steel wool. Kind of burnishes the surface. Got to be careful when you're using this stuff though on spindle turnings. They'll catch and rip out of your hand, of course. So be careful of any long stringy pieces, and certainly don't wrap it around your finger or anything. Okay. You can kind of see as I turn that, it's got kind of a wobble on it, meaning that end is not real square with the hole. The problem is when you go to put the stopper in, you might have a gap on one side. And what I usually do is just hold it against my belt, figure out where the high spot is, go over to my belt sander and just sand it a little bit. All that could have been avoided, again, if you start off with a really nice square blank, but my table on my drill press and the end of that board must not have been very square. This is a little stand I made for, it's like a drying rack. And I've got a bunch of these 3/8" dowels. I have cut a little slot in them. I've also sanded a little bit of a taper so that you can push them down in there. And it makes a nice little way to hold on to these guys as you spray them. I am gonna spray this with, I've used a lot of different things. I've used polyurethane, Makes a really durable finish. The drawback is it takes a little bit longer to dry. I have used Danish oil, let that dry, and then buffed them with my wood buffing system with wax. Makes a really nice looking surface, but it does tends to fade pretty quickly, especially when you touch it a lot. I've fallen in love, I think, with just spray lacquer. I just buy cans at the convenience store or the box stores, and it's a fairly durable, looks very nice, it dries super quick. There's a fresh coat of spray lacquer, Krylon. I'll let that dry a few minutes, several minutes, 10, 15, maybe a half hour. I'll touch it. If it feels a little bit rough or you got little fuzzy bumps on it, I'll take sometimes some steel wool to it, blow off the dust, wipe off the dust, and then spray it again. They say you should put moisture in with the glue. I like using these coffee stirrers. Doesn't take much. And I like to also have a pair of, in case that gets tight and you can't turn it in my hand, I just use some small channel locks to hold on to that. Then I do the same thing. Add a little moisture to the inside of the stopper. A little bit of glue on the coffee stirrer. Don't want to overdo it. It'll squeeze out tight as you can. Let that bad boy dry. You got yourself a stopper. Couple of notes. These are designed to keep this from spilling. They're not designed to store your wine on its side once it's opened. They will leak. And I've also found most of these bottles are pretty common size, but you do get a few every once in a while that are bigger or smaller. Some of the older versions of these stoppers had a couple of O-rings around them. If you can still find those, I would avoid those. They did not fit as universally as this style will with the multiple rings. They just seem to fit better. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. They're a really simple beginner project. You can do just about any shape that you want. Let your imagination go wild and have fun with it. Thanks for listening.